Good morning, children. Today, Social Science in History in Class 9. We will continue the lesson Forest, Society and Colonialism. Due to the control of Forest Department on the forests, people suffered in many ways, but some people benefited from new opportunities that had opened up in trade. But these new opportunities in the forest products did not improve their lives at all. In fact, some of the forest communities, like the Santals, were recruited to work on tea plantations in Assam. And they suffered because of the fact that their wages were low and working conditions were bad. And if they wanted to return home to their home villages, they were not allowed to do that also easily. So they faced so many difficulties because of all these restrictions and the laws that had come to be implemented. So if we take the example of Bastar, now Bastar is located in the southernmost part of Chhattisgarh, and a number of communities form this group, that is the Muria, Gonds, Dhurwas, Bhatras and Halbas. They speak different languages, but their customs and beliefs are common. That is, they share their common customs and beliefs. One of the beliefs that they have is that each village was given its land by the earth. So they have to respect the earth and do something in return. So they in turn look after the earth by making certain offerings at each agricultural festival. That is their way of showing respect to the earth. Then they also show respect to the spirits of the river, forest and mountain. Then they are aware of their boundary, of the limits of the boundary. So the local people look after all the natural resources which are found within their boundary. But if some people from one village want to take some wood from the forest of another village, they can't just simply walk in, but they had to pay a certain small fee called devsari or dan. So they were allowed, but they had to pay a certain fee for that. Then some villages went to the extent of protecting their forest. And how did they protect their forest? By keeping watchmen. They engaged watchmen, and all the people, every household would contribute some grain to pay them, because they also had to be looked after. And the headmen of villages in a pargana is a cluster of villages, meet every year to discuss whatever issues that the people face in that area. Now, with the government laws, the colonial laws and the forest department, the people began to feel very apprehensive and worried as to what is going to happen in the future. So when the proposal of the government, of the colonial government, came forward, which was to reserve 2/3 of the forest in 1905, then along with that, the shifting cultivation was stopped, hunting and collection of forest produce. So all these things naturally caused a lot of anxiety among the people of Bastar, that now it was more and more difficult to live, to survive. Because of the shifting cultivation that they had stopped now, hunting and collection of forest produce was not allowed, and to reserve 2/3 of the forest also. So these were the things, the forest laws that became, that caused fear and anxiety among the people living over there. Now, there were some villages which were allowed to stay on in the reserved forest. Reserved forests were the best forests, but they were allowed to stay there on a certain condition. And the condition was that they worked for the forest department. There would be no payment at all. So that was the condition, that they would work for the forest department without payment, and they would help in cutting and transporting trees. So that was the work that was given to these people. And also they were expected to protect the forest from fires. So this is what came to be called as the forest villages. So they were allowed to stay over there in these forest villages, provided they worked without any payment for the forest department to help in cutting and transporting trees and protect the forest from fire so that they are not destroyed. So with this, what happened was that people of other villages were displaced. There was no notice given to them, there was no compensation paid to them. So naturally some of these villagers became homeless. Then these colonial officials exploited them in various ways. How did they exploit them? That the demand for free labor and goods was increasing. Then land rents had also increased. So when the land rent increased, and then they had to work free of cost with no payment at all, and they demanded goods also. So their suffering increased more and more. And to make matters worse, there were terrible famines. That is, one was in 1899 to 1900 and in 1907 to 1908. So these famines worsened the matter more for these people. So people now began to discuss that how can they tackle the situation, how can they handle the matter to set matters right. So people began to gather together to discuss these issues. They, in their village councils, in the bazaars and at festivals, and headmen and priests assembled to discuss all these issues and difficulties that the people were facing over there. Then the Durwas of the Kangar forest, the place where reservation first took place. Over there was no individual as a leader, but an important figure in this movement, that was Gundadhar from Netharnar village. And many people took the initiative, of course, but he was one of the important leaders or one of the important figures for this rebellion. In 1910, messages like mango boughs, lump of earth, chilies and arrows were circulated. This was done to invite villagers to rebel against the British and the laws that they had imposed on all of them. So that was their way of encouraging more and more people to get involved so that the British would come to realize that what they were doing was not right for the people. Every village contributed. And how was their contribution? That bazaars were looted. Houses of officials and traders, schools and police stations were burnt, robbed, and grain was redistributed. And all these places were attacked because they were associated with the colonial state and oppressive laws. So that was their way of rebelling against the forest laws, the reservation, and all other restrictions that came to be imposed by the British on these people. Thank you.